Hi, this is Sergio. In this video, we'll talk about tips and tricks on Asian countries. Asia is the world's largest continent. Due to its massive size, I sorted this guide into geographical regions, grouping countries with similarly looking landscapes and cultures. In this way, you'd be able to easily distinguish them from each other, despite sharing many similar characteristics. So without further ado, let's explore the world with just a click. West Asia. West Asia, also known as the Middle East, generally has a hot, arid climate, mostly dominated by desert landscapes. It is the only region in Asia that mostly writes in Arabic and in Hebrew to a lesser extent. Countries with official Google coverage include Israel, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates. Other countries like Lebanon, Palestine, and Qatar have extremely limited coverage. All countries drive on the right side of the road. You can recognize Israel quite easily. It has several unique clues, one of which is this type of script. The Hebrew language is quite distinct, as you can often see this apostrophe-like sign on signages. By the way, this sign is called a Jeresh. You can also make a quick guess by checking the back of the car. When you look down, you can see an exposed antenna on the back, so that is a great clue also. However, if you wish to prefer an immersive geoguessing experience, then checking the license plate can be your best clue. In Israel, they have these yellow license plates both on the front and back portion of all vehicles. One interesting clue for Israel is this stop sign with the hand gesture. This is really distinct from any other stop signs in the world. Other indicators would be these street poles, as they usually have the black and white stripe in it. Also, electricity poles can sometimes look like a metallic tower with zigzagging patterns. By the way, you can find all these clues mentioned also in Palestine, as both countries actually share similarities in infrastructure, but Israel has more coverage. However, you can always double check the signs. If they don't have Arabic strips on them, then it is definitely Israel. For Jordan, you can rely on clues from the metagame. If we're talking about countries within this region, you can only find a black Google car in Jordan. If you're not fond of using meta clues, then you can always check for real location ones. License plates in Jordan are white, which should help you differentiate it from Israel, as they have yellow plates. Jordan may look very similar to Tunisia and to some extent UAE, as they share the same language and desert landscape. There are ways to distinguish these countries. English translations in Jordan are very rare. However, in the UAE, they are fairly commonplace. In Tunisia, these translations will most likely be in French, and their license plates in Tunisia are black. Also, most cities in Jordan are often sloping and hilly, unlike Tunisia and the UAE, where they are mostly flat. Furthermore, like Jordan, the UAE also has white license plates, so the rule of thumb is if it has tall buildings with very clean and wide streets, then that is definitely the United Arab Emirates. If not, then that's Jordan. The United Arab Emirates has a distinct look and feel. Despite sharing similarities with Jordan with the language, the license plates, and the desert landscape, the UAE has a certain level of development which separates it from Jordan with its well-maintained streets, tall buildings, and skyscrapers. Cars in the UAE also have newer models, and you can often see sports cars and SUVs. English translations are often commonplace. If you want to make a quick guess, you can always refer to the meta clue, as the color of the Google car in the UAE is white. Palestine rarely appears on maps and is sometimes mistaken for Israel. This is due to some parts of the country being occupied by Israeli settlements. So once you see Israel indicators but signages have Arabic scripts, then it might not hurt to guess for Palestine. Like as you can see, this vehicle has a yellow license plate, yet you can also see Arabic scripts. Here's another example. These black and white stripes on poles can also be found in Israel, but the signage has Arabic scripts on it, so this is in Palestine. In Palestine, it has yellow taxis, which are actually solid clues, as Israel has white taxis instead. These taxis usually have green tinted plates. There's also a minor meta clue, as you can see an escorting car, which is a white van following you. This is usually found within the area of Ramallah only. Qatar is probably the easiest country to guess as there are only two official locations with coverage, both found at the capital city of Doha. One of them is the Hamad International Airport, which looks like this. Inside, you'll often see Arabic scripts with English translations, as this is an international airport, and this insignia logo of the airport. Another clue would be seeing these iconic burgundy wine-colored uniforms of the cabin crew. The other location is the Museum of Islamic Art. This is how the lobby would look like. It can be quite tricky to guess Lebanon as you can be placed in a historical site without any signages, like this ruins. Your best clue would be to look down as coverage for this country is very limited and only conducted by trekkers as you can see from this outline. If you're fortunate to be in a city, keep a lookout for signages as those would have Arabic scripts. You can also see that cars have a blue strip on the left side of their license plates, similar to ones you see in Europe. Having both those clues is a dead giveaway for Lebanon. Also, being a former French colony, you can sometimes see street signs with the French word for street, which is rue, paired with Arabic words. Central Asia. Central Asia generally has a dry climate with some parts being arid. Landscapes range from desert to grasslands. In terms of writing systems, Cyrillic is the most dominant. Countries with official Google coverage are Mongolia and Kyrgyzstan. Both of them drive on the right side of the road. Kyrgyzstan is easily recognizable whether you're using meta clues or not. In terms of meta clues, you can see a distinct white or silver Google car with exposed side mirrors and metal bars when you look down. Also, the coverage for Kyrgyzstan is in winter, so trees typically don't have any leaves or foliage. This gloomy vibe would help you distinguish Kyrgyzstan from Mongolia, which has mostly summer coverage. If you're not a fan of meta clues, you can still identify Kyrgyzstan given with the red strip on the left side of license plates. The only other locations with this configuration are Albania and the little island called the Isle of Man in Europe, but these areas don't actually write in Cyrillic. There are certain letters in Cyrillic that are only found in Central Asia, like these ones, but this letter is unique to Kyrgyz alphabet only. You may also get coverage outside the city, like this one. Similar to Kyrgyzstan, the Google car in Mongolia is exposed. There are two types of Google cars for Mongolia. One of them would be this, where you can see camping equipment with a snorkel on the right side. You can often see this car within the capital city of Ulaanbaatar. The city also has another defining feature, as you can often see Coca-Cola and Pepsi ad signages anywhere. Signages are often a mix of Cyrillic letters and with English words. Mongolia also has an extensive desert and grassy coverage. You'd be able to see this other Google car variation in Mongolia in the desert. The car is similar to the one in Bangladesh, where you can see the red side mirrors with a green paint reflection of it and exposed metallic bars. For the other coverage, it may look like this, where it's just grassy plains with virtually no trees. This is actually called a steppe landscape. South Asia. South Asia, also known as the Indian subcontinent, has a varied climate, ranging from the dry, arid north to the wet tropical south. Landscapes are also varied, with lowland desert on the west, grassland savanna on the center, mountain jungles on the northeast, and lowland jungles on the south. Writing systems are diverse but mostly derived from ancient Indian script. A common feature among countries within this region are the presence of rickshaws, both mechanical and motorized. Countries with official Google coverage include Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. India and Pakistan have extremely limited coverage. All countries drive on the left side of the road. Unlike other countries, Pakistan has no official coverage, and it isn't available to most maps, but it can show up sometimes in country street challenges. Coverage is mostly in photospheres and trackers like this one. Once you're here, you'll notice that people mostly wear a distinctive traditional attire like this one. Usually, women wear full body clothing and often has garments to cover their hair or sometimes their face, and men wear loose clothing. Although you can also see this outfit in India, this one in Pakistan is more prevalent and the clothing is more baggy. If you get lucky, you may be able to see signages that look like Arabic, which is actually the Urdu script. Seeing that clue is a very good indication that you are in Pakistan and not in India. India also has limited coverage but shows up more often than Pakistan. Coverage can either be in photosphere or street view coverage, which is conducted by a tracker, as you can see by this small blur. As for street view, coverage is mostly around indoor places, tourist attraction sites, and school campuses. Given that India has several official languages with different writing systems, we won't go into detail for each of them, but the most common is this script with a horizontal line on the top for the northern region in India. The southern part has a more rounded or circular type of characters. However, if you're interested in knowing the key differences of different writing systems in the world, please let me know in the comments. Given that India is more influenced with Western culture than Pakistan, you may often see more non-traditional clothing being worn, like this one. In terms of temples, it is easy to recognize when you're in India because they have Hindu temples where they often depict their gods on paintings or sculptures. When you can see an elephant or a being with several arms, then it is highly likely that you're in India. You may also get coverage on Buddhist temples. Bangladesh is an easy country to guess. The Google car is quite similar to the one you see in Mongolia, where the red side mirrors are exposed, including the metal bars at the roof, and since both have vastly different landscapes, guessing would be a breeze. If we're not using clues from the meta, it'd still be easy to guess the country just by looking at the roads. It has coverage on public roads unlike India. Rickshaws such as these one are often the mode of transportation. After all, Bangladesh is the rickshaw capital of the world. In terms of writing systems, they use the Bengali script, which is quite similar to Devanagari, that's often used in northern India, but there are subtle differences as the Bengali script has sharper angles, which sometimes can look like small triangles at the bottom. Sri Lanka can be tricky as it looks like somewhere in Southeast Asia with its tropical look. However, this can be easily guessed by checking the Google car as it has blue, red, white, or sometimes yellow colors at the back, which is found only in Sri Lanka. Yet guessing through meta clues can be quite unchallenging, so another way to determine Sri Lanka is by checking the license plates, which are yellow. Laos is the other country which has a similar landscape and license plate color, but that can be easy to spot since Sri Lanka drives on the left while Laos is on the opposite side of the road. Also, the yellow plates are only at the rear portion of vehicles in Sri Lanka with the white at the front, whereas Laos has them on both sides. The Sinhala script in Sri Lanka is characterized by round or circular shapes, quite different from that from Laos, but very similar to the Tamil script in southern India. Bhutan is one of my personal favorites as it is very iconic, distinct, and I just love mountains, man. It is unique not only in its look, but also with a few other things. Here, the license plates are full red, can sometimes look orange. Due to its mountainous landscape, you're often placed on cliffs, and you can often see this concrete block lining on the edge of the road. If you want to make it more obvious, you can check the houses as they often look like this. This is what they call a Zhong architecture and it's pretty unique in Bhutan and the Tibetan area. Furthermore, they have a distinctive strip that looks like this where the endpoints are really sharp and pointed. Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia generally has a tropical climate, mostly lush jungle landscapes. Writing systems are very diverse. Similar to South Asia, the presence of motorized rickshaws are quite commonplace. Countries with official Google coverage include Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Laos has limited coverage. There's more or less an equal distribution of countries that drive on the left and on the right side of the road. To the untrained eye, the squiggly script in Thailand may look similar to the ones used in Cambodia and Laos. So when you see a script like this one, you should then check which side of the road they drive, evidenced by where the road signages are facing. It's only Thailand that has a combination of driving on the left side of the road and having a squiggly type of script within this region. Another differentiating indicator is by the use of the camera meta clue. Among the countries using a squiggly script, only Thailand has Gen 4 coverage, wherein the view is very high quality with vivid colors. Cambodia and Laos only has Gen 3 coverage. If you want to know more about this camera generation meta and the differences between them, please let me know in the comments. Sometimes you might be placed in the countryside, such as this one, when there are no signages. Fortunately, you can still get great indicators like checking the road pavement. Only Thailand and the Philippines mostly use this concrete pavement with distinct blocks like grids. Also, you can only find this type of street light shape in Thailand. If there isn't any street light, then checking the top portion of electricity poles can be a good indicator as you will often see these black dots or punctures when you zoom in. Similar to Thailand, the Khmer or Cambodian script has squiggly lines. However, the lines have more hooks compared to the Thai script. Also, the traffic drives on the right side of the road. There are several peculiar clues in Cambodia as you will often see beer advertisements everywhere. Either this one anchor or another similarly sounding but different spelling anchor or even this dead giveaway. You will oftentimes see political ads, usually with a blue background like this one showing some guys on a suit. You may also see another variation of this one without those political figures in Cambodia. If you're on the countryside, there are also other key indicators that you're in Cambodia. The soil has a reddish color in most places, and roads can be dirt roads. Most countryside houses also have this distinctive look wherein they are built above or they're built with stilts. Laos can be easily spotted once you see the silver or white Google car with exposed mirrors and metal bars on the top. Since there are some players who don't want to rely on meta clues, there are other distinct indicators for Laos. It may have a similar looking script with Khmer and mostly Thai script. The main difference would be the Thai script would be much straighter on its characters compared to the Lao script, which has more curves on it. However, it's just best to check which side of the road you're driving because you drive on the right side of the road in Laos. However, when comparing to Cambodia, your best clue is to check the color of the vehicle license plates. Both the front and back plates are yellow, whereas Cambodia has white. With or without using meta clues, Vietnam is an easy country to spot. Instead of a Google car, you get a coverage conducted by a motorbike, as seen by this shape of the blur and the tiny side mirror. Moving away from meta clues, signages are a great way to get clues also. More often than not, business establishments in Vietnam usually show the entire address, usually starting with a number, like this one, for example. Among the countries within this region that uses a Latin-based script, Vietnam is the most unique as it usually has accented characters. Words also often have the NH combination. And if the Google vehicle isn't obvious enough, most people in Vietnam use motorbikes as their mode of transport. There's a foolproof way to determine if you're in Malaysia. The license plates have a black color with two white sections. This helps you differentiate it from Indonesia, where they have the same license plate colors but with three or sometimes one white section. You have to remember that traffic drives on the left, and you have to take a look at the electricity poles as most of them have a black sticker on it. Other indications include seeing stop signs saying berhenti. Signs saying awas can also be a good clue for Malaysia. More often than not, you can also see business establishments with initials SDN BHD or Sendirian Berhad, which is unique to Malaysia. Similar to Malaysia, Indonesian vehicles drive on the left. However, as stated previously, the black license plates in Indonesia has three or sometimes one white sections, whereas Malaysia has two. While Malaysia has the SDN BHD initials in some of its business establishments, here in Indonesia, you will see the PT initials instead, which is the Perseroan Terbatas. If you're playing maps that rely on distance, Indonesia can be a bit of a challenge since it has so many islands spread out far and wide. You can refer to this awesome telephone system map by Kiel Shepherd to help you narrow down your search to key islands. Please check his super comprehensive GeoGuessr blog on the links down below. Being a city-state, Singapore's landscape is mostly urban. Despite that, streets and public spaces are always lined up with lush greeneries and trees and always look very spotless and orderly. If you really want to make sure, one key clue to guessing Singapore is the street signages, as they are usually green with white, distinct letters. They use a standardized font, so that's a pretty good thing to remember, by the way. Since the country is very developed, public transport is very organized and efficient, and you often fairly see them everywhere. So, if you can see a bus with the SBS Transit like this one, then that's definitely Singapore. There are some pretty interesting clues in the Philippines. Being a huge consumer of internet and social media, you'll often see advertisement posters everywhere relating to words like data, internet, texting, gigabyte, or even oftenly referred to as load. Aside from that, if you're in an urban area, you may often see political posters like this one. As you can see here, names and words can have combinations of English, Filipino, and sometimes Spanish words. Here, license plates can vary between white or yellow, but you can also see green tinted ones, which is unique within this region. Maybe the most unique clues for the Philippines are these minibuses called jeepneys and motorized rickshaws with a shape like this one. More often than not, you won't find any vehicle configurations like this one anywhere else. Like also as mentioned previously, similar to Thailand, the Philippines also has these concrete paved roads like this one, which is divided into big blocks. And by the way, there's also a few coverage in the Philippines where you can have a black Google car with exposed mirrors and metal bars like this one. Usually, if you find this one, this coverage is around the big island in the south. East Asia. East Asia has a varied climate ranging from the temperate north to the wet tropical south. Writing systems are mostly derived from ancient Chinese script. Cities within this region are highly urbanized and developed. Infrastructures are mostly well maintained. Countries with official Google coverage include Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, including China's special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. China has extremely limited coverage. Only Japan and the special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau drive on the left side of the road. Taiwan uses the Chinese script, which can have complicated and intricate characters. They also drive on the right side of the road, which can help you distinguish it from Hong Kong and Macau. Another clue to help you guess Taiwan is the diagonal black and yellow paint on street poles. It can sometimes extend to the bottom of the pole, which is kind of different with South Korea because all of them do not actually extend to the bottom. Due to the political ambiguity status of Taiwan, GeoGuessr doesn't recognize it as a separate country, so you have to select mainland China when playing Country Street. China doesn't have any extensive Google coverage aside from a few locations in Beijing and Shanghai, and also aside from the special administrative regions like Macau. Being a former colony of Portugal, you will often see Portuguese translations on signages. So in here, traffic drives on the left side of the road. It uses a black license plate, which is a great clue to separate it from Hong Kong and Taiwan. You can also guess Macau based on the meta. Coverage was taken from a Generation 2 camera, seen by the distinct halo when you look up or down. This is really helpful to distinguish it from Hong Kong, which has a higher resolution coverage. Hong Kong is also a special administrative region of mainland China. Here, the traffic drives on the left side of the road, which would help you distinguish it from Taiwan. Given that Macau also drives on this side, the main clue you will need to look for is the license plate. Since it was a former British colony, Hong Kong shares the same license plate colors with the United Kingdom, where the front is white and the back is yellow, whereas Macau has black on both sides. Building further on that fact is English translations are prevalent everywhere in Hong Kong, unlike in Macau where these are usually Portuguese. In Japan, the script they mostly use is simpler than the Chinese one. They often have these minimalist characters with white birds. A unique feature in Japan is the paint on their street poles. These usually have black and yellow stripe running vertically. That would help you distinguish it from Taiwan and Korea as theirs are diagonal. If you're in a neighborhood, it's fairly common to see these round mirrors placed at every intersection. That may sometimes appear in Taiwan and Korea, but it's more prevalent in Japan. If you're playing distance-based maps, here's a nifty clue to improve your score. If you see these red and white yellow stripe arrows, you're most likely in the northern island of Hokkaido. You may also use the meta clue of checking the Google car, as Japan has a huge blur due to the low orientation of the camera. However, this one can be quite subtle. It's often quite easier for me to look for other indicators.
50 dumplings. Is it a deal?
Huh?
You feed me, and I'll take care of those guys for you.
But
The Hangul writing system of South Korea is really easy to determine if you know what to look for. For starters, you only need to look out for the circles. That actually helps you greatly in distinguishing it from other East Asian scripts. There are certain places in South Korea that may also look like Japan. So the key thing to remember is that South Korean traffic drives on the right side, whereas Japan drives on the left. Similar to Taiwan, South Korea has black and yellow stripes running diagonally on street poles. However, most of them are painted halfway and don't extend to the bottom, unlike the ones mostly seen in Taiwan. If you happen to see green license plates, then that would be South Korea. There are other countries with these green tinted plates but have vastly different landscapes, like the one in the Philippines. Finally, some parts of South Korea have winter coverage, usually in the countryside. That will increase your chances to make a quick guess right away. Due to Google being blocked in China, Street View is not available but only on a select few tourist attraction areas. These locations are centered around museums and cultural sites. Given that China has a strong cultural identity, structures are obviously identifiable, like these iconic buildings with ornamental roof eaves. These old historical buildings are often found in Beijing. Museums are often scattered around the big coastal cities. If the buildings look very modern, they'd most likely be around Shanghai and the other big cities in the south. Coverage in mainland China outside of Hong Kong and Macau are conducted by a trekker. You'll often see a circular blur with a tripod when you look down. This metaclue is unique to China only. So these are all the Asian countries that are part of this guide. There are countries that aren't added yet to Country Streak, Battle Royale, and other GeoGuessr modes, and some still don't have official Google Street View coverage, so consider this list as partial. Due to their cultures more closely linked to Europe, Russia and Turkey aren't included in this guide. These countries will be part of my GeoGuessr Europe guide video. If you find this video interesting, please consider supporting my channel. Thank you, and Sir Geol, next time.